So I really can't come up with any decent musical ideas today. They've all been crap. So I thought I might as well use the time productively and show you guys how I've been making these videos that I've made over the past month or so. Has it really been that long? Yeah, hopefully it'll give you some ideas and inspirations to make your own videos. I've had quite a few questions going,
what app are you using on the phone?
How do you get Zoom working so well?
How are you recording yourself in these videos?
so I might as well answer these questions in a video rather than answer every single one. Like I've got loads of comments on these videos anyway. But yeah, it's something productive to do. Hopefully you enjoy it and hopefully you can take some ideas and inspiration away from it. I also apologise for how awkward I am on camera. Staring and talking to a camera lens is very weird. But at least it's someone to talk to during lockdown, so there is that. Cool, let's get started. Now the first and most important thing about shooting these videos is nothing to do with music, it's to do with coffee. Much better. I feel like I can function like a normal human being now. Cool, so the second stage is then deciding what instruments you're going to have on the track. I vaguely play cajon, I play guitar and I play bass. That's what commonly seems to feature in my videos. Yeah, so we'll start with cajon, why not? This is just a little disclaimer. I don't profess to be a cajon player. I'm pretty terrible at most things that involve hand-eye coordination, and unfortunately cajon involves a lot of that. So apologies to cajon players and drummers everywhere. This is probably not how you play the cajon, but it's how I manage it. And it's easier than programming drums, which is miserable and it takes forever, so I'd rather just play cajon and get it over and done with. Cool, I tend to use two microphones on the cajon. The first is this Rode NT1A, which is on the front to sort of pick up the snare sound. And then I use a Shure Beta 52 on the kick, just so it's got a bit of bottom end. It sounds a bit more like a kick drum. I rarely ever do this in one take because I'm not a cajon player. I mean, you'll see from my technique, I just use one hand. Oops. That also happens quite a lot because I'm quite clumsy, and it's why I also position the microphone a little bit further away than usual. Just because otherwise I hit it all the time. So I'll lay down some cajon. It probably won't be the first take. It almost never is. Let's go for a take. 1, 2, 3, 4. Screwed up the first take. That'll do, it's only a couple of bars, but this is for demonstration purposes more than anything. So I tend to add in some shaky egg and percussion into the tracks, just because I feel like it fills out some sonic space in the tracks and hopefully hides some of how atrocious my cajon playing is. Cool, so I'll lay down some shaky egg, which can also take a few takes. More coffee. I've got a click track set up so I can sync everything up afterwards, which is also why I shout out 1, 2, 3, 4. And often forget to edit it out and it sounds a bit weird. But anyway, 1, 2, 3. Can't do that, but I'm gonna add in some tambourine just because it's got another layer of percussion to it and it's only a short track, so why not? Now the most important, most overlooked factor of using a tambourine is making sure you really have got ear protection because it's so loud and it can cause some serious hearing damage. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cool, with the cajon, shaker and tambourine out of the way, it's time to move on to guitar and bass, which also means rearranging the workstation behind me a little quickly and also clearing up the coffee that I just spilled. Well done to me! Oh, that's most of the coffee cleared up. That was unfortunate. Don't drink coffee in your studio, kids. It's a recipe for disaster. I don't think I've broken anything. I hope I haven't. Cool. With that said, it's time to move on to bass. I'll take you through the setup of that, but basically I take a DI out to the back of my amp and go straight into the interface. And then I use a little bit of monitoring on the computer just so I can get an idea of what the bass is going to sound like in the finished track. It just makes it easier when it comes to mixing. It's really starting to smell like coffee in here, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. So the next thing we need to do is get the files off the camera onto the computer and then we can start working on the editing process. So I'm going to ignore my own advice again and try drinking a cup of tea while I do this. This might not go that well. So while the files are transferring, I tend to do like a rough mix. So I've got something to mix to in the video. So I'll typically start by just clearing up any little bits, like that bass bit that I did at the start, which wasn't right. I didn't, so that's fine. Then I'll take out the cajon bit so you don't hear me shouting 1, 2, 3, 4, because I can line it up to the click track, which you can see here. So the first thing I do when I'm mixing stuff like this is drag all the faders down to 0. But I tend to start with the kick first. Well, I use the word kick very, very loosely. So I'll just drag this to where I think it sounds okay. Okay, somewhere about there. Try not to make this too loud so that it doesn't get overwhelmed. Then I'll do the same for the front of the cajon. About there will do. From the shaker. That's quite loud. Oh, this is a really short track. There we go. About there seems to work. Tambourine about there. Fun fact about the bass part there is I actually recorded it with my guitar patches, so that's why the bass is overdriven. But it sort of works. And then finally get the guitar in there. That seems quite quiet in comparison to everything else. Let me just do that. There we go. Okay, so that's like a rough mix that I'll work to. Then I'll do a bit of basic EQ on everything. Again, I start from the kick and go from there. I don't know why, that's just the way I've always done it. And again, I'm using the kick interchangeably with the back of the cajon. Cool, let's have a listen. Tend to take a little bit of the mid-range out, just because it otherwise sounds a bit like cardboard. And then I add a bit of presence, just so you can sort of hear where I'm beating it with the top of my hand. Again, very technical terms. So listen to the context. And then I'll do the same for the front of the cajon. With this, I tend to roll off quite a lot of the bass so it doesn't conflict too much. Okay, and then add a little bit of low in towards the end of the low mids. Again, take a little bit of the cardboard frequencies out, as I like to call them. Bit of presence, and then just a bit of a high filter. Out there. Then I'll do the shaker. With this, there's not a lot of fancy EQ. I just tend to take off a lot of the frequencies all the way up to about the 2K mark, because it doesn't really have a lot of information below that. Yeah, nice and straightforward. And the same for the tambourine. Quite often I'll just pull the same EQ band. Bass and guitar I tend to leave as they are, because I tend to mess about if I'm going to mess about with anything on the amp. And then I don't really do any EQ moves on the bass and guitar. What I do tend to do on the guitar though is roll off a bit more of the bottom end again, just because you don't need a lot of information from there. And the DI that I've got on my amp tends to give you far too much low end information. So I just do that here. Next thing I'll do is get a multi-band compressor on my DAW, DAW, whatever you want to call it. It's called a tri-comp, but it's essentially a multi-band compressor. And a little trick that I found with the cajon and the way that I play is I will compress it quite a lot. Just reduce the gain back down again. I then boost the low end of the compression and then take away the high end of the compression at the same time. Let me just set up a bit of a loop so I can hear this a bit better. Okay, and I tend to leave the attack and everything else pretty much the same. It's just so it gives it a bit more beef. Then I'll add a touch of reverb. Not that one. Yeah, let's try this one. I usually tend to use this one. That's far too much reverb. Just want something subtle, just so it's got a bit more air behind it. Onto the cajon front, shall I say. And with this, I will do the opposite of what I've done on the cajon back. So, let's have a listen again. I'll squish it quite a lot with the compressor. Again, technical term. I will cut a lot of the low end out like that, and then boost the high end so it's a bit crispier. You could probably get the same effect with EQ and stuff, but I just find it a bit more useful. And then I'll go onto the reverb again and add a little bit of reverb on the front. I quite like this one. That's far too much. Drag the mix back down. Still probably a bit too much. Let's try a different reverb. Let's try that one. Cool. It just makes the room sound a little bit better. That's all I can tell you about that. Shaker and tambourine, I don't do any more compression or effects on those. They just stay the same. They're usually okay. Bass, sometimes I use a compressor pedal on my bass, and there's a compressor built into the amp as well on the gain setting, but I add a little bit more compression just because with this track I'm using some slapping pop, and the distortion's not really helping, so just enough so it's opening up on the threshold and just tightening up some of those transients, basically where I hit the pickup too hard. Sometimes a little thing that I'll do with the guitar is I'll add a send effect on it and add some stereo reverb. Let me just find that. Just so it sounds a little bit bigger, but nothing too complicated. That's far too much. It just adds some more stereo effects. That's more for when I'm doing something more complicated and when there's more guitars involved. I just find it's easier to do that. That's an okay mix, I can work with that. It's not ideal, but again, I tend to do it more once I've seen the video and listen to it on a few different devices as well, which we'll come to. So I'll export the mix down for that. Mix, there we go. Cool. And now we can start on video editing, which is hell. Welcome to hell. This is video editing now. So I've saved myself a little bit of time because I've dragged in the clips from earlier just to make things easier for these demonstration purposes, and I don't want this video to go on forever. So the first thing I need to do is find the rough mix that I used. The program that I am using to edit my videos is called Wondershare Filmora 9. I bought it ages ago. It's sort of like the iMovie of Windows, I want to say. Someone might correct me on that, but that's kind of how I see it anyway. So the first thing I'll do is drag in my rough mix into Wondershare Filmora. Just make sure we can see weight lines nice and clearly. Then I've already found the clips like I was saying before, just to make this a little bit easier. Okay, there's the cajon clip. And I know I didn't get this right on the first take, so I will drag out the bits that I don't need, which are those two bits. Okay, and it should be those bits. I will now zoom in, and you can see here on the waveforms where I've said 1, 2, 3, 4, and I can line that up with the click. So if I'm not mistaken, 1, 2, 3, 4. That should line up perfectly, which it does. It sounds a little bit out of sync because there's a bit of a delay from the camera microphone to where the microphones are on the cajon. You just sort of have to live with that a little bit. So sometimes your hand doesn't move quite in the right place. You can zoom in like I'm doing now just to see if you can knock it a little bit further. But you don't really tend to notice too much of a difference. That, if you see here on the red line, that is pretty close to where it should be. Cool. Once that's done, I'll mute that track and I'll just get rid of the end bit as well there because we don't need that. Nah, get in the right place. There we go. Delete that. That's the cajon track sorted. The next thing I'll do is I will crop. What's the crop button on? There we go. I'll crop down all the areas that we don't need. Let's set a custom ratio so it's a bit easier. Because there's a lot of wasted space which we don't need. And then I'll shrink myself down a little bit and drop that into the cajon. Into the corner. Okay, let's find the shaky egg track. We'll do that next. Again, I don't think. Again, I've got a click track set up, so it's me talking in the other video. This is what happens when you shoot them both at the same time. That should be the right point, so I can chop down some of that. That can go. Then what I tend to do is move that up and get the two tracks next to each other, so it's easier to. I only count to 3 that time. Sometimes I do that. Okay, that looks like it should line up now. with the shaky egg, the trick is always to start before where the beat is, otherwise you end up lagging behind a little bit, which I do here. Okay, that should now make sense. Perfectly in time. Again, I'm using the waveforms to line everything up, and whilst on the subject, I will also remove that because that's no longer necessary. Cool. Let's mute that. That's the shaky egg done. Again, same process. I'll then crop so there's less wasted space. Shaky egg Tom can go in that corner, but like the naughty child that he is, let's get tambourine Tom sorted. Tambourine is quite tricky because it's hard to keep a tambourine quiet. 1, 2. There we go. Yep, that's perfect. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cool. Did that the first time. This never really happens. It usually takes me forever to figure out where the tambourine starts. Shrink him down so he's not a giant. I mean, I'm pretty tall, so probably will always be a giant, but this is just me being finicky, but I prefer having the cajon in the middle and the shaker and the tambourine around the outside. It's coming together nicely. This is actually quite an easy video to edit because it's so short, and for the purposes of demonstration I made it really easy for myself to line everything up. Just wait for the waveform to appear just so it's easier. Start. Yeah, that should be the take there. It's just quite quiet. This is the advantage of it having come through the monitors as well, is you can hear it quite clearly. Okay, so it took me 2 takes to do the bass. Happens to the best of us. Out a little bit, and then this should line up perfectly. Oh yes, that's what we want. It sounds like it's okay. We'll have a look in a minute and make sure the audio is actually synced up. That has happened before. If this was a video that I actually cared about, I'd probably put a bit more effort into where things were going, but a little bit of a delay there, but I don't really mind. I think it might actually be with the fact that I've got like 3 different windows open and I'm recording this screen at the same time. Cool, did I get the guitar in one take? Let's find out in the exciting episode of how many takes does it take for me to get something simple right? The answer's a lot. A little tip that I found is if it's a bit too soon, you won't notice it as much, but if it's late, you'll really notice it. Okay, you get like the attack of the toms there. That looks a little bit weird on the screen right now. Make sure we get that on there, otherwise that will look a bit weird. There we go, we can hear that now. And if I'm not mistaken, we should have everything in sync. Apart from the bass is now overpowering, well, lying over the top of the cajon. Let's just fix that, otherwise that looks weird. Then we'll just want to get rid of the countings because we don't need those anymore because everything is in sync. Select Control-A to highlight everything and drag it all this way. We should now start at beat 1, which is good. We've got a more or less finished video. There's a couple more things that I tend to do. I had some transitions in, just so it's not me just turning around to turn the computer off. Well, stop the DAW. Door. There we go. Everyone puts their hand up in the air at the same time as well. I do that quite a lot. Really weird. It's at this point that I will probably go back to the mix. I won't bother showing you that bit because you can't really hear it. I've not got the screen recording software to link up with my output yet. But usually that's at the point that I kind of go back to the mix and just make sure it's working okay. I would also export it to my phone because most people who watch these videos, not that there's very many people, but will be watching it on a phone or a tablet where the speaker is like that size. It's just easier to try and mix to that than the fancy monitors that I've got that make everything sound great. It's better to have a mix sounding great on a crap pair of speakers than a great mix on a great pair of speakers because most people aren't going to listen through these. I'm going to cut there. I'm waffling because I can't speak to the camera. There we go. I'll show you the finished result soon. I've got the finished product. I say finished product. Product makes it sound like it's fancy. I've not really put a lot of effort into this. Good. We now go onto export and give it a name. I called it higher. I don't know why. Check the quality settings. They're all okay. Then we sit and we wait for the track to finish. Then you upload it to YouTube, Facebook, whatever you want to do. If you want to put it out there. If not, you make something and just leave it in the void. Cool, so this is day 2 of the video editing process because it's taken me forever to edit this how-to video. That was complicated. I hope this video has been useful to people. If you've got any specific questions or comments, just drop me a message or anything like that, and I'll try and answer them as best I can. I'll stick the video that I made at the end in case you want to watch it. I probably wouldn't. If you've enjoyed it, let me know. I keep slapping my leg. If you've enjoyed it, let me know, and I'll make more of these talky style videos. If not, I'll probably make more of them anyway. Cool. This is the coffee stain from yesterday in case anyone was interested. The things that I do for art. Cool. Anyway, here's the video. Hope you enjoyed it. See you next time. Shit.